What's up, Internet? My name is Attack Slug, and this is my Monday Night Raw reaction video for the week of August 24th, I believe. These were a Let's Mess with the Universe Mode video series, but all I ever do is talk about Raw each week anyway, so I'm going to kind of transition into a this is the video once a week where I talk about what happened, or what is happening in wrestling. So, that being said, Monday Night Raw started off with Rollins in the headquarters saying, oh, there's going to be a new statue, blah, 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 and that's, kind of inconsequential, but obviously more consequential when you get to the main event. But, more importantly, we moved on to Brock Lesnar and Paul Heyman coming down to argue, and yes, that was a hell of a weekend there, a hell of a 3 days between TakeOver and then SummerSlam and then Raw, all at the Barclays Center, and whatever else. And I'm pretty sure I'm still playing on Legend here, so that's gonna be a problem. So I don't really want to talk too much in depth about SummerSlam because kind of it is what it is. I didn't think it was a great show. I thought that I certainly enjoyed more of the NXT TakeOver show than I did SummerSlam, and I'll get into that when I start to talk about the Divas in a little bit. But I thought the ending of Brock Lesnar and Taker was kind of dumb, and people are not happy about it. Like, having the timekeeper ring the bell without prompting from the referee is weird. You never should have fired Mark Yeaton, that's all I'm saying. This is what happens. So, interestingly enough, they didn't really have any, big angle to write Brock off of TV for the next, however long that he's going to be off TV. He is scheduled for that house show October 3rd, and obviously no idea who that's going to be against at this point. Whoa, DDT. But he has that house show, but Bo Dallas came out because he's an idiot, and kind of at that point you've got two guys to take that spot, and it's either Bo Dallas or Heath Slater. And apparently Heath Slater has been jobbing to Hornswoggle, so I guess they elected Bo Dallas to get, 6 suplexes and an F5. Is he really going to do the across the ring, the coast to coast? Yes, he is. Yes, he is. These matches are not important. I'm just playing it to play it. I don't have any. I thought I had enough stamina. Well, whatever. So that was the end of that segment, and it didn't seem like they're gonna be writing Brock off TV. So perhaps he's just gonna vanish. I don't know what's actually gonna happen there. Perhaps they'll just do something next week. I don't know when he re-signed. What he. All right, enough, Rob Van Dam. What kind of a deal he re-signed for the amount of dates. Obviously, they're having him work a house show at MSG, which is, significant on a number of levels. And maybe he'll fight Kofi Kingston again, who knows. But anyway, that moves us on to our first of 4 matches. There were 4 matches in this 3-hour broadcast, which is that's a whole different complaint. And it was the New Day versus the Lucha Dragons, which is, a perfectly competent match, highlighted by Xavier Woods on the trombone. The New Day still being amazing. They are one of my favorite things on Raw these days, is the New Day. They are consistently being entertaining heels, on a pretty regular basis. And you wouldn't have thought that when, they first had them come out as the New Day, and everybody fucking hated them because they were terrible. Because that angle was dumb. Really? Come on now. Anyway, so that match was kind of, I'm not kicking out of that. Come on. That match was kind of what it was, but obviously the most significant news there is that the Dudley Boys are apparently back. Don't know how long, don't know why, and the most amazing part of that whole thing was that none of that leaked out at all. There was no, oh, they've been seen in the city, or they've, got flown in, or they signed a new deal. Nothing. Like, people did not expect that at all. There are still times when you can keep secrets in wrestling. It's really hard to keep secrets in the wrestling business, but occasionally it is still possible to keep secrets in wrestling. So that part of it was fantastic. They really need to tone down JBL saying the word. It's the most decorated tag team in history. Like, yeah, they are. But you don't need to say it 15 times in like a 5-minute segment. That's kind of ridiculous. But granted, there were rumors, Edge versus Razor. Okay, there were rumors, like last month or the month before, that they were gonna have the Dudleys fight Luke Harper and Eric Rowan, and then because they had started to do the 3D, and then Rowan got hurt, so that whole thing kind of got squashed. So perhaps they had already been in plans to sign a deal back then and just didn't. But as of last night, they are back, but who knows for how long. But that'll bring me to a larger point later on in this. In this discussion here, and I'm still playing on Legends, so I'm probably gonna lose this match. That's okay. So, speaking of tag teams, speaking of things that just happened at SummerSlam, we had Roman and Dean versus the Wyatts, and again, like, why were you having this rematch the night after? Oh man, what? I thought I turned that off. Stupid chain wrestling. Hate you. And now I'm all kerfluffled. Rusev, crush. That was a weird rematch. Come on now. Like, hey, we're gonna have this again the night after because of reasons. But the reason was that, never mind the still injured Eric Rowan, we have a new member of the Wyatt family. And this is significant because it is someone who has not been, like, spending their 2 years at NXT, quote-unquote, paying their dues, or being, in Indie Star. This is just a guy apparently who was a Rosebud. He was the big Rosebud, with Adam Rose, and had worked a handful of house shows for NXT, not actual TV stuff, is my understanding. So it kind of fits that circle of, Vince has, loves the big, huge dudes. That is Vince's thing, and obviously this guy is huge. And if you keep him limited to, like 6-man tags and beatdowns, that's fine. But you have to question, what is that man? I think his name is Braun Strowman or something like that. What is that man's actual wrestling ability? Is the question. You put him in a singles match with, Dean Ambrose, and how much is he gonna flounder? Because he's just a big dude. Like, ideally, you don't want another Mason Ryan, Jackson Andrews, that kind of big dude, Kurrigan, who, like, can't actually wrestle that well. They're just big. So that's kind of my concern there. If they keep him as the big, scary muscle, then, sure, fine. But yes, new debuts that kind of no one expected, and, like, nobody knows who they are, is always exciting, especially when they haven't been on the indies forever, or, in other federations forever. That can certainly be exciting, and, guys who weren't spending their time in NXT for a couple years, because there's no expectation there at that point. There's no, okay, this is how they were treated in NXT for a couple years. This is the problem that the Divas are having right now, is that this is how they are treated for these 2-3 years in NXT, and they go to the main roster, Emma, and it just flops. Adam Rose. So, speaking of, shake his hand. Speaking of which, moving on to the worst segment of the night, was the Miz TV with Paige, Charlotte, and Becky, and this is, indicative of a larger issue with that entire Divas Revolution. I've been complaining about for weeks, is you've been having these 6-man, 6-woman, 6-diva, 9-diva, etc. matches. You've been having these matches, and they don't actually mean anything. You're not really establishing characters or motivations, or even something as simple as, okay, who is the number 1 contender in any of this? In any of this. Because, as I've been saying, they're so incredibly petty, and they hate CM Punk so much, they want to beat AJ's record for the longest reigning Divas champion. And they will do that, I'm pretty sure, like, right before Night of Champions. Whereas, she will have to defend, there will have to be a number 1 contender before we get to Night of Champions. Like, that has to happen. But it went from a terrible Miz TV segment where, you know, I just could not care less, into yet another multi-diva match, and it was 3-on-3, and that's fine, but nobody cares. And the crowd shit all over it. The crowd was bored. The crowd was like, hey, most of that crowd is going to be the same crowd from NXT and the same crowd from SummerSlam, because they had the thing at the same arena. And the hardcore fans who are going to be in town for that weekend are going to go see all 3. So, those fans who had just seen the 9-diva thing at SummerSlam were not going to be like, okay, yeah, sure, whatever, who cares? Because we just saw this, and there are no consequences. There is no story being built. You spent 2 months on this revolution, and what you got were longer matches and more matches, but no actual, like, what's the payoff, you know? So, that being said, obviously, the divas who were involved in that were not happy with the reaction they received, kick him, at Raw. Now, if you look at the exact opposite, if you look at what the crowd did love, which was NXT TakeOver Sasha Banks versus Bayley, that match was A, amazing, and B, the crowd was like fucking invested in that match. So you ask yourself, what is the difference between what is going on Raw and what was the culmination of what had happened on NXT? Now, I will tell you, I don't watch NXT because I don't have time. I don't even watch SmackDown. So, from having a well-put-together promotional package before the match, and having an amazing match, that was all it took to get me invested in Sasha versus Bayley. Whereas they've had 2 months or so to get me invested in their Divas Revolution, and I do not care. So ask yourself what the difference is there, when that was mostly the same crowd going to both those shows, and one of those matches was amazing, and one of those matches, just the crowd started doing the wave, you know? So, that's a larger problem with creative, is that they fucking suck. Anyway, moving on. Stardust has turned on King Barrett, because King Barrett needs to film a movie. Apparently, he changed his Twitter handle to his real name, which, you know, might be a thing, might not. Who fucking knows? RKO out of nowhere. He's stealing the pin, asshole. And then Neville came out to continue the feud with Stardust, and, you know, sure, fine. Those guys can have good matches. I don't know if that feud was building to the celebrity shit, and then you did that. So, like, what else do you really do with it? But on the other hand, what else do you really do with those guys to begin with? So, then we get our explanation from Jon Stewart, who is apparently still around for a little bit, our explanation as to why he betrayed John Cena at SummerSlam. And honestly, that explanation, wanting to preserve Flair's record, like, I'm fine with that. And that, of course, brought out Flair, and then brought out Cena. And Cena was like, fuck you, basically. So, that's... The Cena stuff, like, from a character standpoint, is fine, but the part where he's giving the AA to a 52-year-old man who is not a wrestler and half his size just kind of makes him look like a dick, to be honest. Like, you didn't need that. Like, I understand why you would do it, but you didn't need that exclamation point on the end of that segment. Like, yeah, and, you know, obviously they're in Brooklyn, so the crowd, you know, does not care for Cena, so they were chanting "Thank you, Stewart," which was fantastic. So, and then Cena gets arrested because they obviously didn't want to have him interrupting the main event statue unveiling segment, but it was kind of anticlimactic, to be honest. And so then the wrestling main event of the show was an 8-man tag with a bunch of guys who had matches at SummerSlam, and honestly, you feel bad for Kevin Owens, who had a match at TakeOver and then SummerSlam and then here. What? No? Break it up, Randy. But that match had another weird, like, the Big Show accidentally punched Sheamus and then the other team won, and then his team started beating up Big Show, but then it's like, yeah, but is that a face turn, heel turn? Does anybody care because the Big Show's been both so many goddamn times? Whatever. Kind of a thing, you know? So that match, not particularly consequential. I think the faces won, but, you know, whatever. RKO out of nowhere. This is why I hate triple threat matches. And then, of course, the main event, which was not really a main event because it was talking. And that was the official statue unveiling for Seth Rollins and his big gold statue. But guess what? We got swerved. It wasn't a gold statue. It was Sting all along. And that apparently makes Sting the #1 contender for the World Heavyweight Championship. Sting, who has a WWE record of 0-1. He's had one match and he lost. Now, obviously, Sting has had a long and storied career, etc., in WCW and TNA. So, speaking of which, this was a show that had the Dudleys, Ric Flair, and Sting. Am I watching WWE or am I watching TNA? But never mind that shit. Yeah, that's my question here. Is Seth Rollins going to defend the U.S. Championship at Night of Champions? Every belt has to be defended. That's the whole point of that pay-per-view. Every belt has to be defended. So will Seth Rollins have 2 matches that night? Obviously, having a match against Sting is not going to be particularly exhausting because Sting's like, 56 or something like that. He's old. So I can't imagine how that match is going to go. And why you would even give Sting a title match at this point in his career. It's weird. It's really weird. So I don't know how it's going to work. It's kind of bizarre to me. But it is what it is. And Sting's going to do what Sting's going to do. And, where does everybody go from here? Who knows? Who knows? Signature. At this point, it's going to stop hitting buttons because I've kind of run out of things to talk about. Apparently, the Dudleys are going to be on SmackDown, and that's fine. So, I don't know what kind of a contract that they signed. RKO out of nowhere. I'm just going to have it. I'm just going to have it. I don't even care. Just fucking pin him. Because I'm out of things to talk about from Monday Night Raw this past week. So, that being said, this has been my Monday Night Raw reactions video for the week of August the 24th. Hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you thought of Raw down in the comments below. And if they're doing it right, doing it wrong. I thought about half Raw was good and half Raw was not so good. So, that's an average week, I guess. But certainly they're, doing new things after SummerSlam. So we'll see how it goes moving forward. So, as always, I am your host, Attack Slug. This has been the Raw Reactions, and I'll see you next time, right here on this channel. And I'm out.